Chris Yandex, CY interview covering Las Vegas and the world. If you have not already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel to keep up with everything we have going on here at CY interview in Las Vegas and beyond. We greatly appreciate your support. Hit that subscribe button below, like this video, and for anybody who is watching a second, a minute, an hour of our content here at CY interview, we always greatly appreciate. So whether you're new here or you're returning, today's topic is going to be, we're going to talk about the new Pete Rose documentary series that was just released on Max, formerly HBO Max, called Charlie Hustle and the Matter of Pete Rose. It's a four-part series focusing on Pete Rose's life today and his desire to continue to be included in baseball's Hall of Fame. So I just want to break down some of the highlights from the documentary. I watched the entire 4 hours. So to begin with, one of the early segments in the documentary is from legendary sports broadcaster Al Michaels, and he sums it up very well, I think, that the Pete Rose story is not tragic. It is sad. It absolutely is sad because a lot of the choices that Pete made are why he's done in the Hall of Fame today. And had he made a couple of better choices and not lied for so long, he probably would be in today's Baseball Hall of Fame. But if that were the case, then there wouldn't be a documentary series and there wouldn't continue to maybe be all this interest around him because of all his accomplishments, all of the hits that he was able to make, of course, breaking Ty Cobb's record and all of those things. So I want to take it to the part of the documentary that really focuses on why the documentary exists. Of course, I want to first make a disclaimer. Of course, we're here in Las Vegas. The majority of people who come to Las Vegas, I believe, they gamble for fun. They bring a couple $100, they gamble at the blackjack table, they put a bet on their favorite sports team to win the Super Bowl or the World Series. It's not a serious thing for them. It's just a holiday thing. They've got a little entertainment budget. They go home and they don't gamble. But then there are people like Pete Rose who, there is a desire, there is a need, there is this adrenaline rush. There is this feeling of potentially being an action junkie where you just have to bet at all costs. And Pete reflects early on in the documentary about how, early on in his baseball career, he only bet horses, but he never bet sports. But then the reality is there was one day he came to the conclusion that, he was betting other sports like football and basketball. And then he decided that the only thing he really knew about was the game that he played was baseball. Well, that's where the problems begin. And as you know, for many, many years, Pete Rose lied to the public, saying that he never bet on baseball until he came out in the early 2000s with a tell-all book where he finally did admit that to Charlie Gibson that, yep, I did bet on baseball and I shouldn't have bet on baseball, but he finally did admit it after all of those years. And that's the problem of why Pete Rose is not in the Hall of Fame, among other reasons, is that he just has chosen to, continue to make excuses for his behavior in certain regards, and that's going to be the problem long term. You know what I'm saying? And that, hopefully maybe one day the Baseball Hall of Fame will let him in. But the reality is this, what should end up happening, if anything. He should not be allowed to have any job or any position in Major League Baseball because he bet on baseball while he was the manager of the Reds. That's number one, my opinion. But number two, you should just put him in the Hall of Fame and be done with it. And then the story would be over. The man is over 80 years old. There's no denying that he has, had punishment for what he did. The reality of what it comes down to is at the end of the documentary, you finally learn that he says that when it was recorded 6 months prior, that he finally gave up sports betting after all those years in his 80s. And hopefully he has. And one of the interesting parts about the documentary as we focus on Las Vegas is that for many years, Pete Rose signed autographs here in Las Vegas. And I don't know if he still does, but he might make appearances from time to time. But here's the thing that Pete will say about that. The reason he chose Las Vegas was not because of his gambling, his desire to gamble. He says it's because people come to Las Vegas, they're on vacation, they want to meet stars, and they have money. And he says that he made over $3 million a year one year signing these autographs for people. He can sign them, he signs to baseball. I'm sorry that I bet on baseball. That's a very popular one, supposedly. The reality of what it comes down to is that you really get to see, the great athlete, but you also get to see how demons and vices can ruin a person. And again, there's nothing wrong with healthy moderation in life, with the things that you want to pursue. But the reality is that Pete Rose, unfortunately, felt the need to bet when he was the Reds manager. And even though he bet on the Reds, he could have made decisions, whether it be replace players, take players in and out of games, change pitchers, that could have affected those players' lives potentially. Maybe if he keeps them in too long, maybe a pitcher could have potentially got injured, or maybe they shouldn't be pitching 3 nights in a row, but he wanted them in there because he had a bet on them. All of those outcomes are possible. And so the reality of what it comes down to is Pete Rose absolutely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. He does not deserve to have any job in Major League Baseball. But this documentary really gives you an updated view of the recent years of what's been going on in Pete's life. And it's really interesting, again, if you love sports and you love historic sports. But the reality is that Pete is a cautionary tale in life that if you let a vice ruin your life, run your life, it will ruin your life. And so we can all learn from him in that regard. There's no denying that his accomplishments on the field were extraordinary. There's no denying all of those things. But the reality of what it comes down to is that unfortunately, he let a vice get the best of him. And most people can, again, gamble a couple $100 here in Las Vegas or have fun. Sometimes you win. Hope you win. I hope you all win. But the reality of what it comes down to is that, for most people, it's not a problem. And that's statistically true. So, but, if you want, go watch Charlie Hustle and The Matter of Pete Rose. It is worth watching. There's no denying that. But, do you want to see Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame? I absolutely do. But you shouldn't be working in baseball. It's as simple as that. I'm Chris Yannick for CY Interview. If you have any thoughts or comments, please leave them below, and I will see you in the next video.